is absolutely wild as Fern Gagne's All-Star Wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the preeminent podcast of the American Wrestling Association. We like to call ourselves AWA Unleashed because that is the name of said project. My name is Chris Tubbs. I'm going to bring in Slick Mick Karch. How are you, buddy?
Doing well, pal. Getting ready for the 4th of July. Do what I usually do, nothing.
Yeah.
And, be a big one this year.
Yeah, good for you. It's first one with your grandson, so that'll be fun.
It certainly is, and I know I won't be setting off fireworks like Chupik does, even without a fuse.
Speaking of Joe Chupik, little new school break here. Ready?
Yeah.
Say his name, and he appears. Ready?
Yeah.
I believe in Joe Chupik.
Joe Chupik. There we go.
Oh, hey, Joe.
I am here.
Wow.
That's a great gimmick. Like the Joe Henry gimmick. I love it. Say his name and he appears. And then he's like, I believe in Joe Henry.
Oh, and by the way, Karch, no, I quit doing fireworks many, many years ago. I mean, when this happens to you, oh, I'm sorry, it was this one. I lost some fingers, so.
What a despicable human being.
I know. I mean, what do you do on Friday nights now?
I still got the left.
You're amphibious. Good for you.
By the way, you talk about July 4th.
Amphibious.
You talk about July 4th, and in all seriousness, it is a special day for everybody. Extra special for my family because July 4th, 1963 is the day that my dad and 3 siblings landed in America.
Oh.
So it has extra special meaning for us. And we used to, when my dad was still alive and mom wasn't in a nursing home, we'd get together every 4th of July. We're still going to do it this year. Mm-hmm. As we have in other years, but it's just, more subdued.
That's great. That's great. And,
we are better. We are better, and the world is better. I'm breaking kayfabe. The world is better, and we are better now that you are here. And
wow,
God, I feel dirty.
By kayfabe. What is this podcast entertainment now instead of just a wrestling podcast or what?
This podcast will never be entertainment.
Yeah, it's a lot of things, but entertainment is not one of them.
All right, we got a show to do. I think we already lost that one guy.
I guess. Well, hey, we workshopped it and we found out that's what doesn't work. So that's what we're going to do. Just like creating T-shirts that don't sell on TeePublic.
Oh, nice segue.
You like that?
Man.
No, we did sell a T-shirt last week. So, Joe, you're going to be getting about a $2 residual on that. So congratulations.
Hey, put in the IRA and retire.
Yeah.
That's really good. Now make sure you send me an XL, not a XX.
What, you slimming down?
A little bit. I'm down at 290.
Or is it 209 pounds?
That's right. That's exactly
slim and trim. Lean in. Anyway, I can't remember what that is because it was a long night last night with the twins. Also, guys, for those of you that are members, or that if you haven't become a member of our Patreon, I really, really highly suggest that you do so. I'm going to put it up on the screen there. We've gotten fantastic response, and we've got people that are continuing to check it out, and everybody that's checked it out has been happy that they have. And for $4.99 a month, we feel like it's a very affordable price point. But what we do is we give you the watch alongs. You get access to this a day early. Our James Beard interview where he talked about world class and recording Iron Claw, just so many different things. We've got that. We've also another new school break. I'm not going to tell you, but I think you guys know one of the biggest stories in professional wrestling at this point. We have a connection to that. And you guys know, and I'm still working on it. We were so close, but things kind of, obviously for various reasons. We've got that. We do have some things coming up for the special Patreon. You get a letter from me. It may or may not be legible, but I'm going to, send you something. You're going to get a magnet, a sticker. You're going to get a 5-pack of pictures from Mick. Again, access to the podcast a day early. I probably should have had you make a new graphic for this, Joe, but I have been slacking on that. You get that. You get our watch along. You get our our monthly live chats at the end of the month, all for $4.99. I mean, it's really one of the best values in the wrestling business, in the wrestling podcast business. And if you become a member and you have not received anything from me, email awaunleashedpodcast@gmail.com or DM me on Facebook, and I will do my best to get something out to you in a timely fashion.
Perfect.
Let me add on to that. So you talked about the watch-alongs, and we had Mr. Eric Bischoff on the show. And for those who saw that, and for those, pretty much for everybody, but our next watch-along will represent the very first video project that Eric Bischoff and I produced together. Well, first and only, but the best of the 80s.
Okay. And I do have, before we get into the no DQ&A here, guys, regarding Eric Bischoff, and I apologize for all of the promotion here, but again, I want to get it out of the way so we can just focus on the questions and not have to try and sprinkle it in. The next Eric Bischoff that we're going to have probably going to be a couple of months or so away because we do have to schedule some things out in advance. I don't know how AWA centric it's going to be. So that may be a Patreon interview. I don't know. And I'm not trying to not give it to people, but if it's not AWA centric, I don't want to gum up the channel with non-AWA content. So that's kind of why we create the Patreon as well, is because we've got these non-AWA things that we want to do that are loosely tied, but I don't want to gum up the channel because then we lose the essence of what it is that we're wanting to tell with the stories. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that if you're looking for Bischoff Part 2, it's going to happen. He's agreed to it. We'll coordinate all the details, but that may be a Patreon depending on how much AWA he talks. It might be mostly non-AWA, but that's still to be determined.
Mick, I can't not comment about your cat knocking shit off of your windowsill behind you.
That's correct. That's some wrestling merchandise that is scheduled to be mailed. So now if you were going to get a picture of so-and-so and you get somebody else, blame the cat. Everything has been now all gummied up, and thank you very much.
Oh God, I did my best to promote, and you guys are talking about the fucking cat.
Well, of course. Well, hey, that's what's going to sell.
You know what? Do it yourself. I'm out.
Let's get into this. Mick, I'm going to ask the first question. Oh, dang, we got Chris. Oh, hi, Chris.
Okay, bye.
Let's get started. First question for you, Mick, is from Kent Peterson. Longtime fan here. Love what you guys provide for AWA fans. I was a big fan of the late Angelo Mosca, especially his feud with Larry Hennig. Do you think he would have made a good AWA champion?
I loved Angelo Mosca. I loved the character. I don't know about him being a good AWA champion. And The reason I say that is Ange was such a character unto himself, and he didn't need a championship. Ange came in and he was under the tutelage of Lord Alfred Hayes back in the day, as well as, Super Destroyer was part of that group, Don Jardine. Angelo Mosca, one of the great characters, man would come out and he would comb his chest hairs, and Larry Hennig, of course, had a great feud where Larry came out and called Angelo Mosca, Angelo Ping Pong Monkey Man, Banana Ears. So it doesn't get any better than that when you call a guy Banana Ears. I think in this day and age, Mosca would be over huge as a babyface. Last time he was here in the AWA mid-70s, he was a monster heel, but he had the kind of character that I think would go over massively as a babyface today.
Yeah, I think he did fantastic on his promos, which is obviously key to getting over as a heel many times.
Oh, there's Big Ange.
Look at that mug.
That guy was a monster, I'm telling you. And, he came out with that thick Italian accent and just a wonderful guy. But AWA champ, I don't think so. I don't think he necessarily fit the mold for Vern Gagne, but very, very entertaining guy.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that, Mick.
Right.
Great talent. Maybe a tag team champion, but certainly not a world champion.
There you go.
All right. This one is for you, Joe, from Pam Soldoff. She's a proud pinfall member here. Have to ask, after listening to Eric Bischoff's interview, any insight as to why Eric referred to Greg Gagne as a dipshit? No. Underrated word, by the way, dipshit.
Yes. How to explain it and be diplomatic, shall we say? Professional wrestlers have to have an ego to whatever degree. And when you get two of them that are on the top end of that spectrum, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but you combine that with running a company filled with egos, you're going to have clashes, you're going to have differences. And I've heard the story from Greg. I've not talked to Eric about it, but it basically stems from Eric not being, and again, this is a version I've gotten from Greg, that Eric couldn't get in contact with a talent. Greg said, let's get my deal with WCW signed and I'll give it to you. Apparently Eric wanted Greg as a part of WCW. And Greg was there for a short time, I do believe. But anyway, to cut to the chase, Eric got the contact info and didn't need Greg anymore. And that sort of was the start of some contention. But I mean, as we saw in the photo, they had gotten together and, are in photos. And I wouldn't say that there's a bunch of hate or even animosity, but a hard difference of opinion.
So this is all post AWA. I mean, I obviously I would have thought that with Eric's position in the AWA and, what you're telling me with how you guys work together, he would not have been in any sort of position to question Greg or be on the opposite end of Greg based on where Greg was at and where he was at. This was all WCW fallout then.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, Eric was an announcer and did distribution for the AWA. And so you're not going to directly question your boss, at least in a hard-ass manner. But again, everybody has a difference of opinion. And the two of them had maybe a couple of times a difference of opinion. And, that leads to dipshit.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
Yep. Let's get to the next one. This is for all of us from Todd Greenstein. I'm sorry, Todd, if I messed that up. I think it's Greenstein. Talking old school here. We hear so much about Dusty Rhodes in the AWA. What are your take on Dick Murdoch? Now, ultimately, I didn't see Dick Murdoch in the AWA. The first exposure I had to him was in WCW. So I didn't, and I know that was probably on the tail end of his career. I thought he was a badass dude. I thought, it was Dick Slater and Dick Murdoch. So Slater and Murdoch in WCW. But your thoughts on him in the AWA, guys?
Dick Murdoch, the Dick Murdoch that you saw in the AWA was Dick Murdoch. There was nothing pretentious about this guy. There was nothing sugar-coated about Dick Murdoch. He was a big, rough, tough, bar fighting, heavy drinking Texan. And Dick certainly had his opinions about mankind in general. Let's put it that way. He was the real deal. And Dusty Rhodes, of the two, Dusty was the talker. The talker. He was the flamboyant one. Murdoch could talk a tremendous game himself. But Dick Murdoch, in the history of wrestling, you talk about the tough guys, along with Dick Slater and guys like that, and Haku and Harley Race. If you don't mention Dick Murdoch in the same sentence, you're full of shit. This guy was as redneck, Captain Redneck, as he called himself in WCW. He was, honest to God, that was Dick Murdoch.
He was one of those guys when he would walk into a bar was looking for two things, actually three. A drink, a woman, and a fight. Not necessarily in that order.
Yeah. Ask the staff and management of the Flame Cafe on 14th and Nicollet in Minneapolis after the AWA shows at the auditorium. When Dusty and Dick came in, let's just say they rearranged the furniture.
Is that kind of the place? Was that their go-to place, or were there other places that they went?
There were other places. The Flame Cafe was certainly the go-to for Dusty and Dick. It was a country western bar.
Okay.
A block from the auditorium. You got that adrenaline rush, and you got the Band-Aid on your forehead from gigging about 15 minutes earlier. Mm-hmm. And that was the place to be, or not to be.
All right, let's go to the next one here for you, Mick, from Ed Brown. He remembers you told a great story in a podcast sometime back about Pat Patterson at a movie event in Minneapolis. He doesn't recall what it was. He just remembers it was really funny. Any recollection?
Absolutely, like it was yesterday, and it was, 47 years ago. The movie was Paradise Alley with Sylvester Stallone. I believe Terry Funk was in the movie. It was the Hopkins Theater. And Pat Patterson and a couple of the wrestlers happened to be attending. And one of the wrestlers was Evan Johnson, young Evan Johnson. There's a great shot of Pat Patterson along with, Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell. The point of this story is that at one point in the movie, it's a very somber moment, maybe a romantic moment. I don't recall which. And you could hear a pin drop in the place. There's Evan Johnson. God love him, was in the business for a half a cup of coffee. And all of a sudden you hear a voice from the back of the room, mind you, breaking the silence. Oh, Evan Johnson, this is so sad. And it was Pat Patterson. Why Pat was picking on Evan Johnson, other than the fact that Evan was a rookie and couldn't do anything about it. Poor Evan Johnson slunk down in his seat amongst the popcorn and the spilled Coca-Cola on the floor. And Pat Patterson had a real good chuckle as everybody in the theater turned around to look and see who was this guy who was either making fun of or making advances to Evan Johnson.
You kind of would have known though, right? By process. Didn't Pat have a very distinct voice that I thought people would be like, oh yeah, that's got to be Pat.
Yeah, well, you got to remember, this wasn't an entirely wrestling fan crowd.
Oh, okay.
So you had the average guy on the street all of a sudden hearing some guy with a French Canadian accent, deep baritone, and it was quite an experience. But no, Yesher, of course, did not throw Pat Patterson out of the theater or anything like that. But it was such a tender moment.
The next question is for you, Chris, from Norm Ackerman.
Okay.
Currently a freeloader, but not for long. Love your dedication to the podcast, Chris. Keep up the good work. I know you've said in the past that you're a big fan of Jake the Milkman Milliman, and you would like to have him on the podcast. Can you provide an update on that possibility?
Well, first of all, Norm, thank you for saying you're going to sign up and you enjoy the podcast. I will look forward to taking your $4.99. As for Jake,
the heel host.
No, here's what I love about the people that watch this and that listen is they understand the bit. Like nobody's getting offended by, like, people understand if we bust on you, that means we love you.
Absolutely.
You don't bust on people that you don't like. And
hold on. So all of the shit that I give Karch means that I really like them?
No, that's real.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for everybody watching.
Yeah, the animosity. The animosity. That's a shoot or a shizoot.
Yeah.
Or we can just stop shiz.
Shih Tzu, yeah, I like that.
I would love to get Jake on. Yeah, Jake Milliman to me was, again, I didn't see the heyday of the AWA. So admittedly, when I'm a teenager, the Team Challenge series is going on and the turkey on a pole and, this and that and the other thing. Those are my memories. That's my era of the AWA. And I think that's the era of a large amount of people that are watching this that want to find out more about the heyday. But when we look at what we did, those were our fondest memories. We didn't know it was bad. We knew it was different, but we didn't know it was subpar until later. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, what was that? I would love to get Jake on, but my understanding is that health issues are going to prevent that, which is a shame. But at the end of the day, Jake's got to take care of Jake and he's got to take care of his family. And we are just a fun, goofy hour a week talking wrestling. I would love to get Jake on, but based on what I'm hearing, guys, it just doesn't seem like it's possible in the foreseeable future.
A couple of times we were close.
Yeah.
I think Jake had expressed some interest in.
I think he wants to do it. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to hold up and do it? And that's the biggest question, because if we set everything up, I want to make sure that we're getting the best stories out of Jake Milliman that we can, because I feel like he deserves to have his stories told.
No doubt about it. And Jake's a hero in my eyes. I mean, and when you talk to old school wrestling fans, you can talk about your Crushers and your Mad Dogs, but invariably the Kenny J's, Scrap Irons, and the Milkmen of the business come into the conversation. And Jake certainly didn't need Jesse Ventura to give him a break, although that didn't hurt. But Jake, the guy that Roger Kent gives pile drivers to himself, falling on that noggin of his, and he had no neck whatsoever. When Jake would swallow, you would see it in his stomach. He got a stomach ache and a sore throat at the same time.
That's a great. Who said that?
I did.
Oh, that's a great line. Oh my God, that was just such a good line.
I love Jake. And Jake, if you're out there listening to this podcast, and we kind of get updates on Jake's health from Tom Rocky Stone. Mm-hmm. And we love you, Jake. And anytime you feel that you're up to it, you can sustain our bullshit for an hour. Even we can't do that. We want you on the show.
Open invitation for the Milkman anytime he wants.
Absolutely. Yep,
And
no
if he
doubt.
needs any more enticement and we can get a couple of more freeloaders to pay for it, we'll buy Jake a turkey. No?
We got another question there,
Yeah,
Chris?
what kind
or
of
is that pretty
residuals
much-
are
Hey, alligator arms.
Yeah, what kind of residuals are you getting from this joke? Damn. You know what? Keep that $2 from T Public. You've earned it. This is
going to
from
go
Randy.
towards the turkey.
Yeah, hey, we'll start a GoFundMe for turkey money. Some people have, people have certain money. We've got turkey money.
We'll get him a pack of Buddig. Go ahead.
The group from Randy Sanchez. Focus up, guys. Got about a half hour here. I'd like to get the opinion of all three of you in the tag team of the Olympians, Brad Reagans and Ken Patera. Remember seeing them in Rochester so many years back. He gets the intention to have them cheered as American heroes, but for some reason the team just didn't resonate. How about you guys?
Timing, first of all. Again, you're towards the end of the run with the AWA, and nothing was resonating. I mean, let's be honest about it. Everything was kind of a blip on the radar. As far as the Olympians, the idea of putting Ken Patera and Brad Reagans together, and there they are. They were the AWA World Tag Team Champions for a short time. I get it in theory. Probably in the 1970s, it would have worked. By this point, it wasn't working. And for me, I don't know how you feel about this, Joe. Ken Patera as a babyface, even when he turned on Bobby Heenan in WWF back in the day. Ken's a natural-born heel. And I just did not buy Ken as a babyface, particularly with Brad, who was a wrestling technician. Ken, of course, the weightlifter. A good idea in theory and on paper, but it just, and again, maybe it's a matter of timing, but it kind of fell flat.
Well, the time that they became tag team champions or became the Olympians was very near the end of the AWA. So there was the timing there. You got to throw in the timing that Ken was on the back end of his career. He was no longer the shredded, muscle-bound behemoth that he was 10 years prior. Age will do that to people. So again, timing, and the third bad ingredient, if you will. And I've had people comment, hey, lay off of Brad Reagans. The reality is Brad was not the greatest promo guy, but he was one of the best technical wrestlers of his time. And he trained so many wrestlers that Brad deserved that spotlight. And I'm glad that Brad was able to get a championship. But you mix everything together, and outside of what I thought was a pretty damn good tag team name, it just nothing worked for the AWA in 1989.
That's it.
And I remember the team vaguely, but I mean, I remember hearing of the team, but I don't ever remember them ever making any sort of an impact that I can remember. I mean, I know we saw them with the tag belts. Were they were tag champs?
Yep, they were tag champs for a
okay.
short
See,
time.
that seems like a silly question for me based on what I saw, but I don't remember them like I remember the Destruction Crew or the Texas Hangman or anything. They were just kind of the Olympians. It was, you could have put any two guys on there and I wouldn't have remembered who they were. And that's unfair to Patera and Reagans because they're both super duper talented guys. I don't remember them. But
Chris, you're not alone. You're at a time when there was 700 people at the Rochester Auditorium watching.
That many?
Yeah, exactly. That's including comp tickets. It was
and
a mix.
Crew.
It was a mix and match of tag teams. You mentioned the Destruction Crew and the Texas Hangman. Yeah, those are the names that you remember in the tag team division in the AWA. Remember, too, last AWA tag team champions were DJ Peterson and the Trooper.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask the average wrestling fan,
they wouldn't know.
Yeah, so it was a bad time for the AWA, and as Joe said, Brad Ringen's technically gifted, but it just didn't click.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. Actually, this is for me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask me this one, Joe? I didn't realize we were in question 7.
This one is from Robbie Sandberg. You guys have talked about family members of wrestlers maybe appearing on the show. I see now and then where Bobby Heenan's daughter, Jessica, is being quoted. I think that would be a wonderful podcast, as do I, by the way. Have you had any chance to reach out to her?
Thanks for the question, Robbie. Yeah, we've talked a lot about getting the kids of AWA stars. Mick, I know that you've been in contact with a couple. I'm going to reach out because we're going to kind of get into a weird scheduling quirk with the 4th of July and then vacation coming up. But I have some contact information of a former champion that I'm going to end up reaching out to him in a moment's notice. I have not thought about reaching out to her, but I mean, the stories she could tell about her dad. And I would love to talk to her because I think that I think people would really enjoy hearing from Jessica, but I have not reached out to her personally yet, but I know that it is definitely on my list. And I love that picture because
that's the weasel suit?
No, it's not the weasel.
The bunny suit.
The bunny suit. I mean, that is not Bobby the Brain Heenan. That is like Bobby the Dad Heenan right there. That's a great picture, guys.
Isn't that a beautiful picture? You know, and Jessica has done some podcasts. I know she's out there, and she would be one that we would love to get on the show. As you said, Chris, can you imagine the stories? And maybe even the verbal taunts she may have taken at school while Bobby the Brain was in his heyday. But we've reached out to a lot of the wrestling families and kids. Some of them are eager to do the podcast.
Yeah.
Rachel Ellering, I know, is all over it. She wants to be on the show.
She's a little one. She's been busy.
Sherry Vachon, up in Montreal, in that area, wants to, and some of the family members from other families just don't want to do the show. So it's a mix and match. But I would love to get Jessica on the show. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, getting those extra behind the scenes stories from that perspective of the AWA talent, I would love that. And obviously, there's not many guys left. Sadly. And so getting the kids on or relatives is just yet another way that we can keep the AWA alive through the preeminent podcast, AWA Unleashed.
Wow, it's almost like you could do a voiceover. Why were you a production guy? Should have been in front of the camera, Joe.
Have you seen this face?
Yeah, that's true.
Chris, I'm like you. We got faces made for radio.
Don't pull Chris into that. I mean,
he's a radio guy. Come on.
I know. Damn.
Okay. We got another question. We just lost 4 more viewers.
Remember what we said earlier, the shit giving is an example of our love for each other.
Yeah. All right. For Mick from Kevin Reese, it's all the Chupik job. No, I may be in the minority, but I long for the days of the squash matches. If I didn't mention, this is for you, Mick from Kevin Reese. He says, off the top of your head, can you name a couple more that have also had good accounts of themselves, but inevitably wound up running into the knee and a 3 count?
I love the way he put that.
He knew what he was doing.
Absolutely. It's you think about the hundreds of AWA enhancement guys or jobbers, whatever you want to call them, over the years, and there's maybe a dozen that stand out. But the guys I think that consistently gave a good accounting of themselves, but hardly ever won, if ever, maybe a house show once or twice. One of the guys that I would talk about would be Ricky Hunter. And there's Ricky right there. He passed away not that long ago. He did much better in another part of the country. He worked under a mask, under a hood, as the gladiator. But Ricky Hunter was one of these guys that would take the heel, always the heel, to the limit. And as Kevin said, run into that knee in the 3 count or the clothesline, whatever it might be. But Ricky was a great, great talent and always showed up with that same tunic, that same navy blue tunic for I don't know how many years. Great guy. Another one that we've talked about on this show is Buddy Lane. And Buddy was from up in the Winnipeg area. His real name was Dave Cochin, or Cochin, and his dad was a wrestler. Buddy was another one of these guys. And I remember a match he had with Bobby Heenan on television where, again, he took Bobby to the limit. I don't remember if he pinned Bobby. He might have. Thoughts are a little vague on that. But Buddy Lane, another great guy, always in the fight to the very end. So, yeah, there's a couple of them, along with the Kenny Jays and the George Daskys, Dennis Stamps, and so on and so forth.
And without them wrestling in the 1970s and early 80s, just wouldn't have been. They put over the guys, and that's what got everybody to buy the ticket to walk into the arena. That's where they made their money.
Yep, there you go. The next question.
I wonder if Chris got booted out for some reason. So, Mick, why don't you go on with the next question? It looks like it's for me.
All right.
And we'll just keep Buddy Lane up on oh, hey.
We're back.
Hey, Chris. It was the weirdest thing because my whole computer froze, like all of the thumbnails, like everything froze. I couldn't even hard reset, and I couldn't send you guys a message, and I'm like frozen up, and I'm like, how the hell are we gonna do? Because I had myself on mute, and I'm like, I can't even tell him that I'm frozen.
Technology.
It's one of those weeks, we got a vacation coming up. We've all earned it. Yeah, I'll give you this one, Joe. This is from Cynthia Lee Butler to Joe. Joe, I ask you this because you spent a little time, partying with the Midnight Rockers back in the 1980s. Marty's interview, that Marty Janetti, on your podcast was, to say the least, disjointed. I follow him on Facebook. Lately, it seems his life has really gone off the rails. Any insight?
My first comment would be that you must have just started following him on Facebook, because it's, shall we say, been a little disjointed for a while. Hey, I mean, look, Marty Janetti is somebody who believed drink as hard as you can, as fast as you can, as quick as you can. And that applied to, shall we say, some other forms of entertainment. And Marty just hasn't changed. I mean, he is the same partier that he was in his 20s. Marty is, I believe, early 60s now. And that hasn't changed. That's just who Marty is, for better or for worse. I mean, you guys didn't see it on when we did the podcast, but we did about 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time here, and we had Marty on prior, just go over a couple of things like we do with guests. And right before we went on the air, Marty said, "Hey, hold on a sec. I got to get ready for this." And all of a sudden, a bottle of vodka comes into the screen, and Marty does what Chris and Mick are doing right now, drinking vodka. Although, you know what I'm talking about. It's just Marty. I don't know that if he does it for shock value nowadays, but he was disjointed before he started his podcast. So it's just who Marty is.
Joe, and guys, Chris, would you agree that Marty is an amplified Marty Janetti these days? And sometimes he'll post stuff on Facebook, and honest to God, I just can't figure out what he's talking about, but it's not good. Something is happening in Marty's
I wonder
life.
if he's leaning into the perception of who people think he is, because based on all the stories, like everybody kind of knows Marty's history, but I almost feel like if he's intentionally, and maybe you could speak to the show because is maybe he's just kind of he's leaning into it. Like, well, if people are expecting me to be off the wall and batshit crazy with some of the things, maybe this is just how I'm going to. And our buddy Mike Moran, who is, really good, good friends with Marty, and I don't know, I kind of feel bad. I'm scared for him in the sense that I can see what's going to happen, and I just feel like Marty's not giving Marty a chance.
You hit it on the head. I don't think Marty is leaning into it. Again, it's just who Marty always has been. The shit that he posts now, as shocking as it is, if social media would have been around in the 80s, he would have been posting the same kind of stuff.
Okay.
Marty is a free-willing, I don't give a shit, give me another drink, give me another line type of guy. I mean, he just, and I don't know that he, does the white stuff anymore to this day. Wouldn't be surprised, but Marty has always been disjointed. It's nothing new. Strange, but not new.
Joe, just a quick question before we go on. We just got a couple of more questions. As it relates to Marty, if he had, and this is just conjecture, if he had the success of a Shawn Michaels, which clearly he did not at some point, would Marty have gone in the direction that he has to the max, the way that he has, had he had more success in the business on a continuing basis, or like it did to a lot of the guys, especially in the 1980s or early 90s, would it have had the opposite effect? Would it have fueled the negative part of Marty's personality?
The difference between Shawn and Marty is that Shawn at one point realized his own potential and what he could do in the business. And Marty, I think, could have had that opportunity. He'd had that opportunity, but his disjointed, freewheeling ways, in my opinion, knocked him out of the WWE eventually. I mean, you got to remember that the Rockers went back to the WWF at the time twice. They went there, and then because of their shenanigans, got booted. They came back to the AWA, and then they ended up going back to the WWF. So the opportunity was there. The talent was there. Marty just would not change. And even for the 80s and early 90s time period, Marty didn't give a shit. He just wanted to be the party guy, party hardy with Marty. And that was, in my opinion, that was his downfall in the business. And that's why I believe that the angle first got developed. It's like, hey, we got, Shawn's got the talent. He's, trying to straighten up or whatever. But Marty, we can't do anything. So let's have him turn on Shawn and get our run out of him, and then get him the hell out of here.
Okay.
Let's go to this one for you, Mick, from Chris Denfeld. His dad tells him that back in the 70s or 80s, Wally Carbo got into some trouble, reported on the local news. Please say it isn't so. Not Uncle Wally.
Can't say it isn't so, because they publicized it in the news, and that was something that Wally certainly did not need. We've referred to Wally Carbo as, in a lighthearted way as a real character in this business. He was a character on television and away from TV. Wally had a lot of friends in high places. He, unfortunately, people make choices in life. Wally got involved in a fencing operation and famously or infamously sold
like fencing, like a fence company, or like the Olympic fencing.
Stolen goods.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know what that term was. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that and basically he sold a stolen television. He was a go-between to an undercover law enforcement individual, which is not a good thing. And it made the local papers. Wally was in fact arrested. I mentioned that Wally had friends in high places, and he did. Among them were some of the Minneapolis police officers. So Wally got a slap on the wrist, didn't do any time or anything like that. But when the story broke, Chris, the fans were unmerciful to Wally at the live events.
Really?
Oh my God, the guy, he'd walk into the building, people, hey Wally, you got any televisions? Hey Wally, what else you got in the trunk of your car? And this went on for a long time. And even to this day, people still remember that Wally Carbo got in some trouble for selling stolen merchandise. So yeah, you know what? But if you knew Wally, it was not a surprise that he, was not always, had the cleanest blackboard in the classroom.
We've mentioned it on the podcast several times about Wally's asking Ivan Putski, how much are you weigh? I can't help but think as you were telling the story and he was trying to sell this TV to the undercover cop, Wally saying, how much are you pay?
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
Wow. Yeah, you're probably right.
Hey, Mick, I know this is probably going to be really tasteless, but I know you know where I'm going. I want Wally to sell a TV, sell a hot TV on the street.
Listen, come here, pal. I know you've been looking at that black and white with the rabbit ears in your den. I got a 1980 solid. It's a console. It's a console television with a 23-inch screen. And not only does the screen big enough, it can even hold my stomach in one shot, but it's got room on the top. I don't know if you call it a shelf, call it whatever you want. You can even put pictures of the kids. And I got a low price today of $199.95, down from $200 yesterday. Come on over here. There you go. Wow. Yeah. I love the guy. That's almost blasphemous.
I know. I that might be the most dirty I've felt about asking any question on this podcast, and that's really saying something.
Oh,
because there's absolutely no line here.
We could have left it at how much you want to pay him, but no, you had to.
Oh no, you opened it, Joe. I'm so glad you said that, because if you didn't, I was totally going to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, are you surprised that we've gone off script?
No.
I mean, we're like doing promos back in the 70s, and we're just give us the bullet points. We'll take it from there.
Yeah,
we could do, and we have done. We'll probably do again a Wally Carbo specific episode. And there are so many Wally Carbo stories. Everybody made fun of him like he was scatterbrained. He was dumb. Let me tell you how dumb Wally Carbo was. He made a fortune in the business. He had a great eye for talent, even though he said X-Pac would never draw a dime because he was too small. Everybody's entitled to one hiccup, but Wally was a character. Whether it was, shall we say, fraternizing with some of the groupies around the horn,
selling
television sets, Whatever he got involved in, there was always a little bit of gray, a little bit of shade of gray in what Wally did. But God, I love that guy. Miss him tremendously.
It would have been a very dark gray, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no question about it.
We got a few more here, guys. Let's see if we can get them all in. I think we can. We got 3 more. This one is for everybody from Diane Paulson. She asked, do you recall any other lady valets, or as Mick calls them, manageresses, in the AWA besides Precious, Sherry, Martel, and Medusa? How would you rank these 3 in particular?
Ooh.
Man. I don't recall any others in that capacity. In a managerial role, I don't think so. Certainly, Sherry and Medusa and Precious are the 3 that come to mind. Oh God, there she is, Sherry Martel. Hard to believe she's gone so many years already. Putting them in order, I think Sherry, Medusa, and Precious, I think in that order, were probably the most impactful in that role. Manageress, wrestler, whatever. Precious, of course, did not wrestle. What a great shot of Deuce. That was the
Chris, put Medusa back up there. Really? That was like the blink of an eye.
There.
Come on, Deuce.
There we go.
No, you froze on Buddy Lane earlier. If you're gonna freeze again, you can freeze now.
Look how tremendous she looked. And one of our favorite people.
Hey guys, the eyes are at the top of the face there.
Oh, I'm sorry. One of our favorite people in the business to this day. God, she made such a success out of herself. But again, the question in terms of impact, I think Sherry, Medusa, and Precious in that order. I don't know how you guys feel.
I'd have to go the same route, but ranking wise, you could go 1, 2, and 3. But if you added the point system to them, I've got to say, pretty damn close.
Mm-hmm. But wasn't Precious though? Was she exclusively with Jimmy Garvin because they were married? Okay, yeah, so I would have to go Sherry, and then Medusa, and just. I mean, I know Precious was with Jimmy. I think when he went to other territories too, but it was like Jimmy Garvin. The only time that she wasn't with Jimmy Garvin, I think, when he was in an iteration of the Freebirds in WCW.
Yeah, and I think too, Chris and Joe, Precious would get involved at the end of a match, spraying perfume in somebody's eyes, and that was it. And kind of strut around the ring and be a little pissy once in a while. Whereas Sherry and Medusa, of course, they were wrestlers. And they got more physical than Precious did.
It's because of that reason, though, that I give Precious more cred, I guess you could say. You knew that Sherry and Medusa could, would, and did take a bump for their interfering in a match. That they're going to get hit, pushed, or whatever. Patty never did. Patty is Precious. Precious never did. I don't recall an instance. I mean, other than
was there ever like any threat of her getting physically involved, or
Well, of course, like but that was the thing. It never happened, and so as a fan, you were just waiting. It's like that biatch somebody just needs to smack her. Like Mick said, spraying that can around and being just annoying ringside. The closest thing that I can probably compare it to, although there's a huge difference, is Paul Heyman, where Paul is not going to take a bump. He's not. He does what he does phenomenally, and that's talk. Patty was in the same vein, although she didn't have the gift of gab that Paul has. Not many do. But my point is, everybody wants to see Heyman get smacked around now. It's the same thing, at least for me back at that time. It's like somebody just finally get in there, put her over your knee and spank her butt. And I would have volunteered for that, by the way. I thought that when Baron ended up dressing up, Bertha
von Raschke.
When he dressed up as Bertha, I thought, well, maybe at least Bertha can put the claw on Patty, but it didn't happen.
No.
Let's go to the next one here, Mick, and this is the last one from Ronald Roth. He's a longtime Bockwinkel fan here, going back to the early 60s when he worked the West Coast. Question for you, Mick, is do you have any pictures of you and Nick together that you would say truly showcases your relationship?
No question about it.
We've seen the words that he's used towards you, and I can't blur those out anymore, or I just don't want to.
I have probably hundreds of pictures of Nick and I together, but the one I think that exemplifies most the genuine love and admiration that Nick had for me, I think we've got ready for you to tee up, Chris. And a picture speaks 1,000 words, and this right here, I think right there that says it all. That is a top wrist lock with a yank of my hippie length hair back in 1972. And you notice Nick isn't even working up a sweat. This was no threat to him. I was no physical threat. By the way, I'm wearing a
aren't.
Pardon me?
Nothing.
You notice he's not breaking a sweat. He's even smoking a cigar as he applies that top wrist lock. And there I am. I've got that "Hello, my name is Mick" sticker, just so I remembered who the fuck I was. This was at a Bockwinkel Brigade convention. I want to say 1972-ish, 73, something like that. But yeah, there's that genuine love. And this was only the beginning, of course. It led to Nick slapping me across the face at Cauliflower Alley, hitting me with his golf club, his crutch, running into me with his walker, whatever. So it was a genuine, love affair between Bockwinkel and I. That is the essence of the relationship.
Thing I love about that photo, besides the fact of him having you in a wrist lock, it just screams 1970s. You start with your hippie hair. You go on to the wallpaper behind you, and then your matching shirt that you blended in very well with that wallpaper. If that doesn't say 70s, then I don't know what does.
And it's you point that out, and that's very astute of you. That was my intention. I had a couple of shirts. I had another shirt. Had we taken that picture in the studio itself, I had a shirt with a wrestling ring on it. Had we gone down to the cafeteria, I had a shirt with a hamburger on it. But when we were put right in front of that wall, I said, "Give me that one there. That's the one that goes with this."
I'm surprised he could find you because you blend in.
I did. And if you'll notice one more thing about that picture, and to this day, I don't know what the hell happened. Maybe it's my hair covering it. I want to know, am I missing one of the bows on my glasses? Now, I'm looking real close there. Is it there or is it not? And I can't tell. Has Bockwinkel reached around from behind and actually dismantled my glasses, which, of course, was the segue for me dismantling Vern's glasses several years later. Just the whole thing reeks of sadomasochism.
Well, all I can say is if Nick was here and he saw that picture and was questioned about it, he would just say that you deserved it.
And he'd be right.
Yeah.
I got one extra question here, guys, and this is kind of off the cuff here, and I know we're getting ready to wrap it up, but and it's kind of a new school thing. So we've got Jesse is selling his edibles now. Hogan is now selling alcohol, his Real American beer. I was asked at work, because I'm the AWA guy, and I work at a local radio station here in Minneapolis, fairly big one, WCC Radio. I was asked if Nick was to sell a product in today's environment, what would it be? Because of Jesse and his edibles, his CBD, THC, Hogan and the beer. What would Nick Bockwinkel and Bobby Heenan be selling?
Oh my God, you throw Bobby into the mix?
I mean, either or, because they asked me and I felt bad because I didn't have any answer. I was like, outside of a dictionary, I don't know.
I would have to say that Nick would probably be selling what he was selling in the 1990s and late 1980s. He'd be an insurance guy, or he'd be selling real estate someplace. I think it would be the same astute Nick Bockwinkel.
Okay.
Bobby Heenan would probably be selling double-edged razors. And just came to my head, have the official Bobby Razor gig blade or something like that, the humanoid gig blade, or, shade between 9 and 5 humanoids, something along those lines.
I'd go for Nick. I would go with wine. Just his portrayal of a, the Hollywood class. Just a nice, smooth, fine wine. Bobby, quite honestly, anything, and it would have sold. I mean, my God, it was Bobby. If I had to pick one thing, maybe used cars.
Okay.
Oh, good one. Good
like
one.
it. If you guys have any ideas on what Nick Bockwinkel and Bobby Heenan would be selling in today's environment, let us know in the YouTube chat or the comments. Let us know on Facebook or DM us or something, because now I'm very curious, because they opened up Pandora's box at work, and now I'm very curious what you guys think. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Let's go ahead and give some shout outs here, and then we'll wrap it up, take it home. What say you, Mick?
I say Jason Lickness, old Jason, part-time referee here in the upper Midwest. Great fan of the podcast, great old school wrestling fan, very loyal to the Facebook pages as well. Nice to have him as a friend and as a fan. So Jason, shout out to you, buddy.
Is he a member?
I don't know.
I don't think he is, so I'm not going to give him a shout out.
Well, then you know what? Then forget it.
There, see, that's what I like. That's what I like. No,
I retract.
All right, Joe.
My shout out goes to somebody that exemplifies a part of that, what I really love about the podcast. And that is the younger generation. Now, I'm 59, so there's a lot more younger than when I started with the AWA. But Chris, like yourself, somebody that came in on the back end of the AWA, or maybe you grew up with it as a teen in the late 80s, the appreciation that you still show for the preeminent wrestling league, the AWA. So with that, my shout out goes to Maddie Montcalm, who I believe, is probably late 30s, I'm going to guess. About 20 years younger than me, and the fact that you still love the AWA and that you tune in, I love that. And if you're a member, well, then I love that.
He's a big time old school wrestling fan, and I love it. Like it's so cool to see. I'm just glad that there seems to be like a resurgence of old school, the appreciation for the old school wrestling. I feel like there's like a groundswell of it, and I love it. I absolutely love it. My shout out is going to go to my coworker, Steve Thompson. He is a part-time host at WCCO Radio. He's been a good friend of mine for many, many years. Steve is, when I'm working, I try and work in one wrestling reference every night, just to see if I can pop my coworkers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Steve is always, there's not a show that goes by that he does not mention the podcast. He does not want to talk about wrestling, that he will not mention fines and suspensions. So Steve is a huge fan. He's always asking about the podcast. Good dude, longtime friend of mine. And Stevie T, this is for you, my dude, and love working with you. So there we go. Next week is another no DQ&A, and then that's going to be the last show we're going to have for a couple of weeks, because we got 4th of July, and then family and I are going to head out for a little bit of R&R. So we're going to be away. But after next week, the one after that is going to be July 16th. And Mick, that is going to be a couple days before you and I head down to Iowa, East Central or Eastern Iowa. I don't. It's a long fucking drive, but it's well worth it. But it is well worth it.
Well worth it. The 25th anniversary of the Dan Gable, George Tragos Luthez Hall of Fame in Waterloo. A lot of great talent going to be at this event. So we are going to be there repping the AWA and the podcast. Of course, we'll be part of the podcast community down there. We'll see our friend Maddie Montcalm when we're there, no question about it. And Troy and Chad and Joyce and everybody else. So looking forward to that. And as we wrap up, I want to remind you, I'm even going to throw in a bookcase and a figurine. If you buy the TV,